It's going to be a very, very intense journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 62 of Frame Skip, your weekly video game / whatever in the world we want to talk about podcast. I am your host for this episode, Austin Eller. I'm joined by George Cam Newton Loftus. How are you doing, George?
Pretty good. Waiting to see if it's going to be George Mac Jones Loftus. Waiting to see if it's going to be George Jonnu Smith Loftus. Lots of options coming up.
Who do you think is what is it most likely to be, in your opinion?
I think Cam Newton is either going to start 2 games. He's going to start 2 games, maybe just 1 game, or not at all. And then I got a feeling that I'm going to be really excited by Jonnu Smith. I love a good 2 tight end scheme. Only thing better than a tight end, 2 tight ends, all about it.
Well, that's great news. Glad to hear that you might have a new name that is potentially not Cam Newton.
Yeah, I love it. I'm still gonna buy a Cam Newton jersey.
And then, of course, I'm also joined this week by the coach, Kyle Newman. How's it going, Coach?
It is going good. Been 48 hours since I've had any narcotics in my body, so
you're taking to drinking.
Yes.
And oh man, that just the double whammy. The double whammy.
I feel bad asking this, especially since I've been on the show like almost a year at this point.
Okay.
But like, where does the name Coach come from?
Because I coach.
Okay. It wasn't just like you like the show Coach, which is a great show.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a 80s or 90s, isn't it?
That's a beautiful show. Craig Nilsson. Yeah. Craig T. Nilsson.
It was at Minnesota, right? He was a football coach at Minnesota.
Yeah.
From what I remember. No. So I coached, and I was coaching when I met these guys, swim and water polo coach.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah.
So since he's not coaching anymore, we need to start calling him Kyle.
Well,
or
here's
teach.
the thing with that.
Got to keep that CH nickname.
I coach my students to pass the state exam there. But
oh yeah, that's true.
I'm getting out of that. Well, I hit 20 years in the military, 2 years from October. So next, if I don't deploy, which I'll find out in the next couple months with my leg and if I need surgery, but if I don't deploy, then I will be moving back to Dallas about a year from now in the summer. I'm going to stay 1 more year in El Paso. However, if I do deploy, then I'll just go a year in 2023 instead of 2022. And I definitely start coaching then. So, and I almost got picked up by one of the best districts in swimming in Dallas last summer when I was trying to look for work. But the only thing is they were going to give me the position and everything, but they didn't have a math position open, so they couldn't fit me in. So, but yeah, long story short, coach swim and water polo.
There you go. The question's finally answered awesome. That you've all been waiting for.
Well, I feel like those are really underrepresented sports. Like my high school, because it's high school, right, Coach?
Yes.
Okay. My school didn't even have a water polo team. Like we had a great swim team and like a pretty good dive team, but like water polo wasn't even a thing here.
Yeah, most high schools will not, but on the West Coast, especially in California, that's like sure.
We've all seen the OC, Coach. Yeah, we've all seen. We know how popular and accurate the OC was. We know.
Right. So, but swimming is huge in Texas. So
that's funny because, I mean, it's so dry and humid, or dry and like.
Well, we don't wait to jump into the pool.
I don't know where
after
it
rains.
You say it's so dry and human? Was it?
No, I was trying to find the right word. I just, I don't necessarily think of Texas and swimming, is what I'm saying. But
yeah, that's fair.
But I get it. I mean, it is hot outside, so it makes sense that you would want to get in the water.
Well,
but go ahead, George.
Well, with the amount you talk about the Dallas Cowboys, you could have bet me $1,000 before this podcast started, be like, oh, well, he was clearly like a defensive coordinator, like, right. Or oh, he was like a wide receiver coach. Never in a million years would I have guessed swimming and water polo.
Yeah, been swimming all my life, but out here, because of how cold it gets. It does get cold once you get into November, December. It can. So we have what they call natatoriums, which they're like huge facilities where they got seating, and it's just, yeah, it's big. A lot of parent involvement. So I'm excited to get back into it.
Well, there you go.
But there were, fun fact, and we'll go on to the next topic in a second. But there were many, many times after I got done teaching, because we always had morning practice.
Right.
So I'd have to be up at 4:30. So we would be streaming on Google Hangouts. And I'd come home, I'd be exhausted, and I would fall asleep. And these guys would hear me snoring. Like I would fall asleep on stream.
And we would still be talking as Coach was like snoring in this chat. It was a good time. It was a good time.
Those were fun times, man.
Yeah. So, Coach, speaking of fun times, have you been playing anything fun this past week?
Well, yesterday was the first day I actually was like, okay, I got to pick a game and jump into it. And so I started playing Spider-Man. So the night before that, I did the update, opened up my Miles Morales, put in the code for the 4K update and all that stuff. And like I was playing till like 1:45 this morning. And it's so addicting going around and getting the backpacks, taking the pictures, the hideouts, I mean, the story is so far is good, but just all the in-between stuff that you can do before you progress the story is just, it's amazing. I'm loving it. Like I'm legitimately loving it. So I decided that I'm going to do my best to make this my first trophy, my first platinum.
Awesome, man. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I was telling him off air that it's a pretty straightforward platinum. It's just kind of time consuming for certain trophies, but yeah, it's very achievable. And I mean, I had fun the whole time I was doing it. So
yeah, I like that it doesn't ask you to do anything that isn't fun in the game. It just asks you to do the fun stuff a lot, to the point where then it's up to you if it's still fun or not because you've done it so much. But you know how there's like other games where it's like I have to play a completely different way to get this trophy than I want to in the game, like the ideal play pattern for this game. But like Spider-Man doesn't do that. It's just like, hey man, we put a lot of time into these systems, max out these systems and you'll get every trophy, which I think is like a completely valid and probably like my preferred way for platinums.
And while I'm playing, I'm like low key comparing this to Arkham Knight, right? Because that's the latest and greatest from Rocksteady. And like that's my favorite series. But I'll tell you, I didn't want to go back after Endgame. I didn't want to go back and do all the Riddler trophies. Like that wasn't fun to me.
Sure.
Doing all of these minor quests, those are fun. Going around the city and taking the pictures, and while you're doing that, you're hitting runs and all that stuff, right? So it's making it's fun to do those things. Whereas Arkham Knight it was a fun game, but like completing it like I want to try and do Spider-Man, it was not fun at all. It was definitely not fun at all.
Yeah, I agree with that because I played a lot of Arkham Knight and then I got to the end and I think it was like to get the full ending, you had to get all the Riddler trophies. And I was just like, this just is not enjoyable to do this. So I just stopped. But no, I mean, I 100. Yeah, I 100%ed Spider-Man and I just had a blast the whole time. And I think it's because they nailed the gameplay. I mean, every single thing you do just feels fun. Like even just like traversing the city and, your basic stuff, going to find a backpack or whatever it may be. I always had fun with that game.
And I'll definitely roll right immediately after. I'll roll right into Miles Morales. So I'll try and get both of those platinums as my first.
Yeah, dude. Like I know Seth was a little down on Miles Morales. I know he's just not super fond of that character yet because he doesn't think he's had like the big like defining Miles Morales justifying story. I disagree, but that's why everyone has an opinion, so you can do stuff like that and have a conversation about it. I think the game is like that defining Miles Morales story. Like I thought the game was fantastic, and I'm so excited because it takes everything that was great about the Peter Parker Spider-Man game and just like trims all the fat, because it's like, yo, we know you put a lot of time into this Peter Parker game. We're going to give you so much cool stuff to do, but you're never going to feel like you're drowning in stuff to do. So like I loved it. And that was like a 12-hour platinum, I want to say. Like it wasn't hard, but it was enjoyable. Like it was just a really, really well balanced trophy.
I mean, and think about what they could do. Like they could kind of do something like the MCU, but in video games. So I'm talking about Sony, right?
Mhm.
There are some really good characters they could bring into this whole world, and do something special. I don't know if they will. You know, I hope we would see like a Venom game. You know,
Dude, you play as him in Ultimate Spider-Man, and it's weird and it's awesome. Like half the missions in Ultimate Spider-Man on like original Xbox, PlayStation 2, and Xbox, you're GameCube, sorry. You're bouncing back and forth between Ultimate Peter Parker and Ultimate Venom, and it's just such a different way to play. It's so cool, and yeah, I would love it if they were able to introduce that. But like, I'm not sure which license they have technically. So,
well, I think Sony has the whole Spider-Verse, right?
yeah, but like, I don't know if they're like contractually obligated to only feature characters who may or may not be appearing in spin-off movies. Like, I don't know like how granular the details get, because in terms of cross-medium synergy marketing on all that stuff that I like, you hate. I work in advertising and I absolutely hate it. I think it ruins so many things. I don't know like what they're obligated to include, what they're obligated to not include. I hope it's free reign, because I think after playing Ratchet and Clank, I'm just like, yeah, I want Insomniac to somehow make 3 games a year, because they are slowly becoming like my favorite developer.
Did you platinum that?
I platinumed Rift Apart, and then I went back and platinumed the PlayStation 4 one. Yeah.
Oh, the 2016.
Yeah.
Good job. That wasn't no easy feat, was it?
It was incredibly more time consuming than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Rift Apart was like a 12-hour platinum, and it was great. The 2016 one was like a 35-hour platinum.
Oh God!
I bit off a little bit more than I could chew. I'm like, I'll just finish this in a week, and I did not.
Yeah, I heard that one was a little bit difficult and time consuming to get.
Not difficult, but definitely time consuming. And like, you just had to, I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to farm here, because I'm losing my mind. I don't know what else to do. I need to get every weapon up to level 10. I guess I'm just going to keep dying to this boss and just level up all my guns this way, because I'm going crazy.
Coach, is there anything else you'd like to bring up that you've been playing, or is it mostly just Spider-Man?
Nah, just mostly Spider-Man. I mean, when I got my my Game Boy Advance, my original, I was playing Superstar Saga, Mario and Luigi, but everything's taken a backseat to Spider-Man. Like, I'm not going to play anything or think about anything until I finish that platinum.
I think that's the right move. And I think I'm curious to see what you think about the end of the story and like where things are going to go next, because there's a lot of exciting things that could happen with the next Spider-Man game, I think.
There be some breadcrumbs at the end.
Yeah.
I'm very excited,
Yeah. But I mean, we've already kind of moved into it a little bit, I think. But George, what have you been playing this week? I know Ratchet and Clank is one of those games.
Bro, I've played so much. I was off last week, so I've got 2 weeks worth of gaming to talk about. Played Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, got that platinum. Played Ratchet and Clank PS4, got that platinum. Started to play Ratchet and Clank Full Frontal Assault, and that is like the MOBA game with Ratchet and Clank.
I did not like that game.
Yeah.
Why'd you choose that one?
Because it was a 12-hour platinum, according to PSNprofiles.com.
What about the one that came out towards the end of the PS? Well, not really. It was
Into the Nexus, which is now expensive.
Yes, I'm really glad I bought that one a while ago.
It's like a $70 game.
I went back and bought all of the Ratchet and Clank games in anticipation of Rift Apart. So I've got like the HD collection, I've got Tools of Destruction, I've got Into the Nexus, I've got Deadlocked, I think is the only one that's available digitally, or I just had that from PlayStation Plus. Like, we've got All for One, Future Imperfect, like I've a Crack in Time. Like I grabbed all the ones I could find that were like under $20 at the time. So I got lucky, because apparently, like I said, some of those shot up. And I started Full Frontal Assault because it was supposed to be a super easy platinum. And I'm sure it is if you're playing with another player. So I might go on PSN Profiles and try to set up a session with someone else who wants to grab that plat. But man, playing by yourself, that game is such a chore. So I'm gonna stop. It's like beautiful. Like also like all the animations that I thought were so amazing in Rift Apart. I'm like, oh well, they were doing this on PlayStation 3. It just looks better on PlayStation 5. Like the way Ratchet's like ears moves every time he like runs or jumps or anything. Really impressive stuff for PlayStation 3. And then in the interest of cleaning up old platinums, I went back. I started an Evil playthrough on the original Infamous. That game is still awesome.
Yep.
And playing it on hard, Evil is the way to go because you just don't have to care about hurting anyone. So you can just be an absolute maniac. And so I'm breezing through that, already on mission 10, and I started like this morning. Besides that, I started playing God of War 2018 for the first time on my PlayStation 5. And that game is very, very special. I'm excited. I'm going to play some more. Tonight is game 6, I believe, of the NBA championships. So after the game, I'm going to go back to God of War for a little bit. And then Austin and I made a deal to start playing older games. And I've played 2 of mine so far. I've played Shadow Complex, like the big Metroidvania-style game made by Epic back in 2009, 2010. That game's incredible. I cannot recommend that game enough. I'm playing that on PlayStation 4. I'm playing the remastered version, and it is so much fun. And it's got Nathan Drake doing the voice, so you're just hanging out with a charming guy the entire time. And the game is super fast and just super fun, and it's getting me more excited for Metroid Dread. And I also played some Twin Snakes, and I need to be just so much more inebriated to play that game, because I found that to be a struggle. I did not understand how you're supposed to do that game at all.
So I guess I'm interested to see, like, did it just not make sense, like the gameplay, or
the gameplay didn't make sense? The actual like instructions don't make sense. I think I need it. Like I love like a naked UI where you don't see anything on screen except what you're supposed to see. But man, I need like a compass or something just like telling me where to go, because like I find the game very, very obtuse in its design.
That's interesting. I never really had that problem. And I mean, I played the PS1 version first about 7 years ago. But to be fair, that was still 7 years ago. I mean, I'm sure it's still aged not so great over the past 7 years. But I will say, though, I have heard people don't like Twin Snakes as much as the original version. So I don't know if it's necessarily something with Twin Snakes or not. I haven't played that version specifically. That's interesting, though. I was just kind of curious.
I will figure out. Like, I think I need to do that game like with a guide, because like I don't care about like enjoying the gameplay necessarily, but like I do want to sort of dip my toes into a Hideo Kojima joint and just sort of like see the entire structure of like what a video game is to him, because I've never actually beaten a Hideo Kojima game, I don't think. No, I do think. I know I haven't. So I kind of want to, like, I think I'm just going to restart the game on like very easy and just try to get through it as fast as I possibly can, just to like absorb everything I can about the game, because I don't need the challenge at this point. You know, like that's not why I'm playing games anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's cool though. I mean, you're doing better than I am. I haven't started any of my 3 games. So.
Oh my god, I gave you an extra week even, Austin.
I know, George, but then like I was playing Miles Morales, and honestly, I should have just made that one of my games, because I was like right at the start of it when we did that list. And then now I'm playing Monster Hunter Stories 2.
You can do this. I'll give you like a bench sub in for your games.
Okay. Which, I mean, Monster Hunter Stories 2, the problem with that game is it's like 100 hours long. So we'll see when I get around to things. And then, of course, next week, Flight Simulator is coming out on Series X, which is like part of why I bought my Series X. So we'll see. I'll get to my games eventually, though, I promise. It'll probably be next month.
All right.
But I will get to them. And I do think the next one I'm going to do is still Quantum Break. I think that's going to be the first one I play through when I do get to them. But yeah, I'm about probably 15 hours into Monster Hunter Stories 2 right now, and loving it. I really like it. Really, really like it. And I didn't play the first one, so I didn't really have any experience with it. Aside from knowing that it was like a turn-based RPG, kind of like Pokemon, where you get to collect the monsters and, you know, fight with them and have your party, and it's pretty similar. But I I don't know. There's something about it that's just, to me, it's kind of nice having like a Pokemon style game that has different mechanics. Like it's not necessarily type based. It uses more of like a rock, paper, scissors kind of thing. And so
This is
based off
this
the
is
attack,
your Yakuza Like a Dragon. Like this is your big
Yeah.
series reinvention. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying it. It's really cool. The art style's great. I love the art style in it, and the story is actually really interesting. I'm very intrigued by what's going on, and which is unique for Monster Hunter because typically, like the mainline Monster Hunter games, don't really have much of a story, or if they do, it's not really worth paying attention to that much. Aside from maybe in 4, but it's been kind of nice to just jump back into like a turn-based RPG because I've tried to avoid them for a while because of how long they are.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to avoid this one just because it's Monster Hunter and I wanted to give it a shot. And so it's been kind of nice to get back into it. I don't know if I'll ever get around to beating it just because I've heard it's like 100 hours long, but I hope I do. As of right now, I'm motivated enough that I feel like I potentially could, as long as I keep up at the pace I am. But it's a fascinating game. It's cool collecting the monsters and the demo. By the way, if anyone has a Switch and you're interested in the game, seriously, download the demo because it's like 6 hours long. Like it has the first 6 hours of the game in it, and you can just keep on playing until you get to a certain story beat. You can grind your monsters forever, hypothetically.
Gross.
Without, yeah, I mean it's yeah, it's a great demo though. Seriously, I mean I didn't get my copy until a week after it came out, and I mean I played that demo the whole week, and so just try out the demo if you're curious. But yeah, I'm loving that game. And I did want to talk about quickly too, just for like a brief moment. I picked up my Quest again, started playing some of my Quest 2, my VR, and downloaded this new game that just came out called Township Tale, and it's fascinating. It's kind of like Rust or Ark or The Forest, where it's kind of like a survival, go out and find materials and build these things and kill enemies. That way you can build a base and stay alive, and your standard survival game, but it's in VR and it's only $10, and it has online support, and just wanted to say it's a really fun game so far. So if you're into stuff like that, $10 on the Quest, Township Tale, buy it.
Damn, $10 can't beat that. Really quick before moving on to, I have Apple Arcade, and Monster Hunter Stories Plus just joined Apple Arcade. So for $5 a month, you could play the original game, and it's had like all in-game purchases removed. So you just get you get to just play the game, I guess, like the way the developers maybe not intended, but the way it probably should have been released. And also, I totally forgot, I grabbed Skyward Sword on Switch, and that game is frustrating as hell to play. I've only done it handheld, so I need to do it with motion controls. But man, trying to get the sword swinging, because it's mapped to the right analog stick.
Yeah.
And so not only do you have to, if you want to swing left, you absolutely have to swing left, but before you have to draw the sword to the right. So it's relearning how to play, and it's so weird because your character moves so cumbersomely. Link himself just looks like an idiot as he's walking, but then there's just so much precise control with his right arm. So it looks a little awkward seeing him just be like a bumbling idiot with 3/4 of his body. And then the right arm is the only thing he actually has mastery of. But man, I haven't played this game since it launched on Wii, and I had to stop playing it on Wii because I felt like I was always recalibrating my controller. But man, there's just something special about a Zelda game where you're just I'm going to sit down and spend 4 hours doing this.
How did it look?
I thought it looked great. I actually really like the art style. It looks a little washed out, but I think that makes it look a little bit more mythic and almost epic. It looks almost not Okami levels of watercolor, but still just distinct and special.
It's interesting what Nintendo does with that series, or at least the producer. I forget his name.
Numa.
Numa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you look at Ocarina of Time, right? and it was dark, right? I mean, it did have some light side parts, but it was dark. And then you get Wind Waker, which is bright, and colorful. And then it goes back to dark with Twilight Princess. And then with Skyward Sword, it merges the two together almost, it seems like. And then, of course, with Breath of the Wild, it does, I think, a perfect balance of the dark and the lighter color texture, or not color textures, but the color palettes, I guess you could say.
I think you're onto something. Yeah.
Well,
so I totally forgot. This is where like the stamina bar comes from. I completely forgot that it was in Skyward Sword.
Yeah. George, I was going to ask you, I've heard a lot of people complain about the way the camera works as well. Like that you have to, what is it? You hold the left bumper or something, and that's what activates the camera?
Yeah, you hold the left trigger, and then you're able to sort of like move. Well, it's just because like the sword is completely mapped to the right analog stick. And so you can use the right analog stick for the camera when you're holding the trigger. I'll be honest, I've forgotten that most of the time, and I'm pretty sure that like when your sword is sheathed, you get like at least minimal camera movement with the right stick without holding the trigger. Like I haven't really noticed it, and before long, like I didn't even realize I was holding the trigger down when I was like looking around. Like it became like that instinctual that quickly. Like that that felt like an older game. Like that felt like a PlayStation 1 game or something.
I was just going to say, though, it would almost, to me, and I've heard a few people make this reference, it would almost make more sense to make that button your draw sword button and then use the right stick. But maybe I'm just...
Oh, that makes sense.
I don't know.
Oh, that actually...
I feel like if they had reversed it, that would have made things like drastically better.
The thing that would make that tough is I can't remember if it's the trigger above it or if it's trigger on the other side. I believe it's a trigger above it on the left Joy-Con. That's what like locks onto an enemy.
Oh, the lock-on. Yeah. Okay.
And so I don't know if holding them both would be awkward, just because I've only ever done that by accident. I can't think of too many games that do it. I really like it. I recommend it. It's tough because I've been seeing a lot more Nintendo games go on sale recently.
Yeah,
like going down to $40. So I don't want to tell anyone to spend $60. Like if, like me, you've never finished this game, I'd say it's probably worth it. But I don't know. Like, I mean, I almost bought Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze because it was the cheapest I've ever seen it at $42. Yeah,
such a good game, man. It's one of my favorite games.
Yeah, I loved it on Wii U, and I bought it for $20. It was great. I wish the Switch version would take a freaking hint and drop below 40 just once.
Yeah. Do you guys hope that maybe next year, because I see Breath of the Wild coming out in 2023. And I think that for maybe the holiday season next year, we'll get Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess. Do you? Oh,
I don't know. I think that's ambitious, man. I think we're gonna get Splatoon 3 instead of either of those, and that's gonna be like the big holiday push.
I hope we get Splatoon 3. That will be amazing. Yeah. That is such an amazing game.
That game is really good.
Yep. And it'll blow up their servers, so.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's about it for our games we've been playing this week. So let's move on into some news stuff that has been going on this past week. There's actually some pretty big stories this week.
Yeah, there's some pretty good things.
There's some pretty good stories this week. George, I want to start with yours because I think it's absolutely fascinating that this is actually a news article.
All right. This is our first time doing like a traditional episode in so long. I'm so excited. And I know like the evergreen episodes are more fun, but this was just too big of a news week to ignore the things we want to bring up. So last week, or 5 days ago, Lucas Shaw from Bloomberg reported that Netflix is planning to add video games to its service in the next year and has hired Facebook VR's games content head and former head of mobile games at EA to run its new gaming division. And then the person who retweeted that was Mark Grumman, who is like a business analyst person. He retweeted that quote again today. And he said, on earnings call now, Netflix confirms it is working on adding games and won't charge users extra for them. And then just shared that with the story from last week. And you can find this at Mark Grumman on Twitter. I think this is kind of fascinating because this is getting into like my big problem with Netflix lately is that everyone had Netflix because everything was on Netflix. And then all of a sudden NBC was like, well, man, if so many people are watching The Office, why don't we just have our own streaming service? And it's like, well, no, we watched The Office so much because it was on the thing we already had. Everyone watched Parks and Rec and West Wing because it was on the thing we already had. And then slowly but surely, like, Netflix has lost value, at least to me, and I assume to a lot of other people, just because Doctor Who wasn't there, just because The West Wing wasn't there, Parks and Rec, The Office. So many shows have just started appearing on native apps. Like The Twilight Zone, I don't believe is on Netflix anymore, because why would it be? It should be on CBS All Access or Paramount Plus or whatever, you know?
Right.
And it sucks because there was a lot of value in $10 of Netflix a month when everything was on it. That has since become $40 a month to all the services. So if Netflix can introduce games at no additional cost, I'm really curious what that looks like, because I assume they're going to cater to where their platforms are streamed most. And in my head, at least the way I understand the model, that is tablets and mobile phones and smart TVs. So what type of games do we think could run on smart TVs and tablet and mobile? This is not reported anywhere. This is just purely speculation on my head. Our PlayStation Netflix streamers, are they going to get better games? Our Xbox, our Nintendo? Because is there Netflix on Switch, or is it just Hulu still?
I don't think Netflix is on Switch still.
Good grief. All right, Nintendo. Yeah, so what kind of games do we think are coming? I don't think anything too special. I think it's like...
No.
And also...
Well, the only thing I can think of, and this isn't like a Netflix game, but they did that Stranger Things game like a couple years ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was like a top-down, I believe. It was like a top-down Hotline Miami type deal.
Yeah, it was some sort of like pixel art-based like indie Stranger Things game. That's like the only instance I can think of them even being connected to a game in any sense. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make mostly mobile games that can maybe be ported to like PS5 and stuff. You know, more in the line of like indie titles.
Yeah.
But
I see you and I raise you a couple things. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. One, I think you just brought up a great point with indie games, because what is that, like Annapurna and like A24? Isn't there some kind of partnership there?
I think so.
Okay, so that's just like two big indie studios from their respective mediums working together. Someone correct us on that, because I feel like that's 80% correct, but still a little incorrect. So please hit us up with corrections, because I'm not going to look that up right now. I'm recording a show, damn it. The second thing I want to bring up is Bandersnatch, which was that interactive Black Mirror episode. And so they just say video game content. I have no idea if that's like existing video game content, which I would assume it was, just because Netflix has a habit of taking libraries of old things and making them available.
Right.
You know, until the rights holders decide like, oh, we're actually big enough to be on our own. Sorry, I'm still pissed about Netflix losing things.
Everything.
But like an interactive TV thing like that, like that's really interesting. There was recently a direct-to-DVD like Batman Death in the Family, where it was based off like the old comic book, where people literally got to call into DC. There was like a 800 number, 900 number, where you got to vote if Jason Todd, the second Robin, the Robin at the time, lived or died. And like by a vote of 75, like by a margin of 75 votes, Jason Todd got the crowbar from Joker, man. Like that dude was iced for like 20 years. And so I wonder if they're going to start doing, like, if that's a video game to them, which like I think it absolutely could be. It's not that different than Telltale, you know? Well, their entire business model.
Well, and even on that topic, Minecraft Story Mode is on Netflix, and that was previously a video game, obviously, and they put it on Netflix, and it essentially works the same way as like Bandersnatch or whatever, where like you choose certain things or dialogue options. And I haven't done it yet, but it's obviously that literally was a video game that is now on Netflix. So it'll be interesting to see if that's their focus.
That's fascinating, man. Terrible time to be alive, but a great time to play video games. That's exciting.
Not if you live in El Paso, I'll say that. Not a terrible time to be alive if you live in El Paso. But remember, Netflix is the ultimate definition of perseverance, right? They have outlasted this whole time, and they've had to adapt and they've come out successful every time. You know,
it's so weird. They existed before the concept of streaming really did. You know, like before Like you'd stream like live events, but like no one rented like movies digitally. No one did that digitally. The fact that you're right, outlasted is like the best possible word to use. Like they've survived every possible fad that was thrown at them. It's pretty remarkable.
Do you guys remember the day when you signed up for Netflix? Do you remember that day?
I don't remember the exact day, but it was like around January of 2010. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the day. I just remember my parents signed up, and it was obviously when the DVDs were still a thing, and we would get the DVDs every month or whatever it was.
Here's the deal. Here's why I became a PlayStation gamer. It's actually because of Netflix. Because I didn't care about online games, because I grew up in the middle of the woods where I could not play online games. I had no sense of like online community. And so you needed to pay for Xbox Live to watch Netflix in the earliest of days. And I thought that was ridiculous. So I got a PlayStation 3 the Christmas 2009 because my dad was like, you're a movie major, like you're a film major, you love movies. Here's your first Blu-ray player. And it was like right when they introduced the Slim and it went on sale. And so I signed up for Netflix because it was free. All I had to do was wait a week to get a disc from Netflix that I had to put into my PlayStation 3 in order to access the digital streaming content.
Yeah, it was good times. I mean, like, even though they were like B-rated movies, you still had movies on demand, basically, right? Like these movies, and you could just sign up to get what was it, like one movie a month, 3 movies a month, or whatever. I forget what it was, but then, you know, Blockbuster, they tried that model. There's a really good documentary. I love documentaries, and there's a really good documentary on Netflix and their evolution. You know, like it's amazing what Netflix has done throughout the years. So I'm not counting them out on this. I don't think they're going to bite off more than they could chew. So it's not going to be like Red Dead Redemption 3 if it ever comes out, right? But it's going to be, I think, a good platform for maybe indie titles to jump on, you know, and it might be, you know, another platform for developers to put their games up.
And I'm curious too if they try to go I mean, obviously it's a streaming service. They already have, like, they know how streaming works. I'm curious if they go the way of xCloud or Stadia. I mean, I'm curious if they try to do kind of streamed games through the app on your TV or whatever, and all you need is their Netflix controller or whatever it is. And I mean, I think that could be fascinating too. I just don't know, as far as game development goes, if they're like on that level, or if we should expect more like the kind of choose your own adventure type stuff, or what we're talking about. But I guess it's going to be a while before we know. So,
well, that, and I don't know, I mean, like you could stream Super Mario Brothers off a Game Boy Advance card. I'm not saying Netflix is going to get Super Mario Brothers, but even if they just had like a hardcore 16-bit library, you know, like, what if Mega Man Battle Network was on Netflix? That seems like a good platform for it, because you're already in the computer,
right? Or like Axiom Verge 2, you know, Tom Happ, his upcoming game, which is, I think it's more along the 16-bit line, right? This game would be a perfect place for him to put his games out there, because he doesn't get the I mean, everyone knows about Axiom Verge, right? How it's just like, for Metroid fans that have not gotten any content for how many years, you know, this was their opportunity to jump into something really cool that had its own story, that was definitely inspired by Metroid, you know. And now that his new one that he's working on, you know, it'd be kind of cool to see him be able to put that on there and see how it works out, right?
Yeah, and I think we're going to wrap this up soon because we got a lot more to talk about. But before, some parting thoughts. Netflix isn't afraid to cancel things that people love if it's not performing to their standards. So that's one thing that kind of scares me, is that they're going to start this idea but never fully commit to it because they always have one foot at the door. Another thing, I genuinely grew up loving like movie tie-in games. They were the fastest games to go on sale, like at Walmart or Target or Toys R Us. So I played most of them, and like some of them were pretty darn good too. Like The Two Towers game on Xbox kicks ass. Like the Return of the King game on Xbox kicks ass.
Bro, that was a good game. Like
Right?
that was by EA.
Yeah. Like those games were good. And so like if this opens up, granted it's not going to be for huge giant properties, but one of the things that helps make things huge giant properties is saturation across different mediums. And so like maybe their next big movie will have a tie-in game. And this also opens a lot of exciting doors for exclusives across platforms too, you know? So it's like, okay, to iPhone streamers, download this tie-in whatever to whatever, you know, for PlayStation. Like this is a good way to sort of get exclusive stuff, and it's kind of like a minimal cost, I guess, for the developers, or sorry, for the platform holders, where they just get sort of bonus content that makes their platform look great on a app or service that most people presumably have. So I think that's exciting, and I think we've wrapped up the Netflix thing. Unless you guys have any rebuttals to.
Well, I was just going to say that my last thing is, and I mean, this is obvious, but I just have to say it. They've got to be looking at Game Pass and Apple Arcade. I mean, I'm sure stuff like that is what has spurred this on.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll just be interesting to see what happens, and if they're, you know, trying to compete with that or trying to kind of do their own type of game service.
Yeah. Also, Apple Arcade is dope. If you're buying a new iDevice soon, I recommend getting Apple TV because Ted Lasso is about to come out. But if you don't care about the greatest TV show of the last 5 years, then please go for Apple Arcade. There's so many games on it.
So, fun fact, I just bought like during the pandemic just because I bought the 4K Apple TV, right, and love it. So, what were you saying is coming out?
Ted Lasso season 2 on Apple TV Plus.
Okay, I'll just have to start watching.
That first season's already on. It's 10 episodes. It's great. It's made by Bill Lawrence, the guy who did Scrubs and Cougar Town and Spin City.
And how's the gaming on it? How's the gaming there?
Apple Arcade, I've only done it for mobile games, and it's great. Okay. They actually went back and remastered a whole bunch of like the original biggest games on iPhone, and took out all the microtransactions. And so, like, you can play Angry Birds without them constantly saying, like, oh, your energy's low. You can play Cut the Rope without them being like, oh, cool. you got to get more coins. Like, you can do Monster Hunter Stories Plus. And it's $5 a month, and there's a whole bunch of exclusive games. The idea, I think, is if a game launches on Apple Arcade Plus, it's exclusive there for X amount of months. But they just have, like, such a wide variety. Like, I spend most of my nights falling asleep doing, like, the crossword puzzle just through Apple Arcade Plus. Like, it's just dumb stuff like that.
What was the game in 2012 where the dude made $1 billion, but it was hard? It had like the
Flappy
Mario
Bird.
background.
Flappy Bird.
Flappy Bird, man.
That's it.
That's historical. That game is historical because I just moved back to Dallas, and my students, that's all they could play. So once they got their work done, right? Trying this Flappy Bird crap, you know?
Dude, that game became a mini game in Goat Simulator. It's called Flappy Goat, and it was awful. And you had to beat it to get like the platinum in that game.
It's crazy how that game took over the world for like a couple weeks.
That guy was making I think because that was like a PewDiePie game that he featured, and so like there was minimal ads in the game, and the guy built it just because he was like, I just want to see if I could do it, and then he ended up making like $50,000 a day over like a 6-month period, 6-week period or whatever. And then he just started getting death threats about how bad his game was. He's like, all right, I don't need this. I'm just like a student in Thailand who made this game, but whatever.
All right. So to follow up on that one, Coach.
All right.
You've got something interesting and disappointing for us.
All right. Well, this is out of Japan, so it hasn't affected us yet. But we did talk about this. I think it was last year, talking about eShop shutting down eventually or something like that. Like some of the Central American countries, I believe it was.
Yeah.
But Japan, they're not shutting it down. But what they are saying is the following. Okay, so back in 2019, Nintendo announced 3DS and Wii U users located in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand would no longer be able to top up their eShop funds with a credit card. Now, Japan is part of this, with Nintendo's customer support account on social media today confirming, credit cards and prepaid cards will no longer be accepted as of 18 January 2022. However, you can still purchase the eShop cards and use those after. However, so how does that affect us? Well, I mean, at the top, it doesn't affect us because we could still go on and purchase. But with this announcement, I'm thinking it probably won't be too long until Nintendo of America follows suit. I mean, which is still fine because I believe you could still go into GameStop or Walmart. Maybe not Walmart, but I'm sure GameStop. But you could probably purchase them on Amazon, right?
Right.
So it's just going to make it a little bit more difficult to purchase those games. And remember now, on the Wii U, the Nintendo 64 emulator is horrible. However, the NES and the Game Boy Advance emulators were like spot on.
Yep.
So if you want to purchase some titles, and in the next few months or so, I would definitely do that. Like I'll probably hit up the 3D, or not the 3DS, but the Game Boy Advance. Sorry, the Game Boy Advance titles.
Right.
Man, yeah. You remember when like the WiiWare store was closing?
Bro, that was hard. That was bad.
So I completely misunderstood which store was closing, and I came home from work and like I had gone out for a few beers with friends, and I was just like telling them like, oh yeah, it's gonna go home, grab a couple Nintendo games before the store closes. Ha ha ha. And I like ended up getting pretty drunk. And I went home and I bought like $200 worth of games. And like I said, I misunderstood which store was closing, so I just bought like N64 games on the Wii U because I thought that's what was closing.
Oh no.
It was awesome. I just played F-Zero for like the next month. Like it was great. But I did severely misinterpret what was happening.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just the sign of the times, I guess. You know, with all the hoopla with the PS3 and the Vita, recently.
Yeah.
But you could still purchase through the Vita account, correct?
To buy PSP games?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so what ended up happening, you might have been gone when this happened, but
Yeah,
they
I think
obviously they reversed their decision. So you can still buy what were they shutting down? The PS1 Classics, George, and then the PSP and the Vita store was supposedly what they were gonna.
I thought they were shutting down the PS3, the PSP, and the PS Vita store. Like everything.
Was it PS3 too?
Yeah.
Okay. But eventually they reversed their decision. And so what eventually happened was, I think they only shut down the PSP store on the PSP.
That was shut down years ago, though.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
So
you
maybe
could still buy PSP games through your Vita and through PS3.
Okay. Well, maybe they didn't change anything then. Maybe they were just like, okay, never mind. We're not doing any of this.
That's what it feels like. But I'm confused because I've been reinstalling or downloading and like trying. It sucks because you can't move games in their order on your PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
So I've been constantly like downloading and then deleting and then reinstalling so I could get like the perfect sensical order for my PlayStation 1 Classics. And I can't download Final Fantasy Origin. Now, I'm never going to play Final Fantasy Origin, but I really wanted that to be the first Final Fantasy game that I installed. And so, like, I don't know if it's I can't purchase it or if I just, like, didn't own the license to it, because they gave out so many of those games as, like, PlayStation Plus titles back in the day. But I was, like, scrolling through my download list. I've got, like, over 800 games on my download list on PlayStation 3. So, like, I wasn't going to sit there and just scroll through all of it to find one PlayStation game. But I tried, so I was just like, all right, screw it. Like, maybe I just have the license. I'll just buy it. And it wouldn't let me add it to the cart.
That's
so
weird.
I have no idea
Bro,
if it's
that PS3
if it's just that game.
Store, yeah.
Oh, God.
I remember I spent an afternoon on a Sunday. I forgot what title was. I remember I called.
I think it was Ratchet and Clank. The remasters.
Yes. Yeah, that's what it was. The Ratchet and Clank remasters. And it is a chore times 100 to purchase anything on that store. I was like, how did we do it back then? I don't remember this.
Dude, even weirder, that was the PlayStation 4 store when it launched.
Yeah.
Oh, the PlayStation 4 store looked exactly like that.
Yeah.
Down to the search function being the worst thing ever. Like you're inputting a high score name on like an arcade back in the mid 80s. It was terrible.
The Wii store, it was easy to navigate. The only bad thing was you could only buy one title at a time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you wanted to get if you wanted to purchase like Legend of Zelda, Adventure, any of the NES games, you had to do it one at a time. And I believe you had to enter your credit card every single time you did it too.
I think you did.
Yeah. So that was the chore for Nintendo, but it was easy to navigate, easy to, it wasn't that difficult, but
also they made it charming. Like when your game was like downloading, yeah, the music was great and like the aesthetic was awesome. And it felt like the future in 2005 or 2006, whenever the Wii released, where it's just like, hey guys, here's like that Y2K we promised you. And then like, I don't know if I might be confusing with the 3DS, but like when you're downloading something on the 3DS, the way it's like the close curtain like comes by and just like slowly fills up a box, right? Like I think that's how they did it on Wii as well. And it's just like, this is really cute. Like I'm into it.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, it's the last thing I have to say on this. To go back to it, though, the 3DS and Wii U situation, like Coach said, I think it's kind of just a sign of the times. Like, obviously, most of these things have to come to an end, but it's sad to me because once this happens here, I mean, that essentially gives like a solid, okay, pretty soon you're not going to be able to buy anything because, like you can get these refillable cards, but what about when they stop selling them, like in a couple of years? At that point, it's over. And so...
So let me ask this before we move on. How important to the gaming industry was Steam itself in the fact of how you purchase games? How much of an impact do you think it had to Microsoft, Nintendo, and to Sony?
I think it was really important to a point, but as these stores are closing and we're seeing what people are offering now, it is no longer important. Like, because Game Pass, you don't own the games. Nope. With Nintendo Online for the Switch, you don't own the games. And that was low key like the best part about that generation was the fact that you could go on PlayStation 3 and you could buy PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1 games. Like it was until then it was everything PlayStation you could ever want. The Nintendo Wii was except GameCube, but you could play GameCube discs. So that part's forgiven, I guess. But like it was your Nintendo. It was your Super Nintendo. It was your Nintendo 64. It was your GameCube. It was, it was everything except GBA and Game Boy. But like, I don't know, the Wii U did that. Like then it was just everything but GameCube. Like it was so weird how like preservation and history was like such a priority for those consoles, and we just so quickly shifted away from that as consumers. It's so bizarre.
Right. And you're talking about Game Pass, right? And of course we don't own it, but so let me give you an example for Fallout 4, right? So I was at GameStop and I'm looking at it. They had Fallout, just a regular Fallout for like $9, right? So I'm not going to buy that because when I did research, that's the version that's on Game Pass. What's not on Game Pass is the DLC for it. And if you want the DLC, you got to pay for it, right? Which is as much as what you can buy Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition for, brand new. So this weekend, this last week, I bought Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition because I wanted to jump into that eventually and just to see, because I love post-apocalyptic games, right? But having Game Pass, okay, if I really want to get into the entire game and play the DLC, I'm going to have to buy that. So I went ahead, instead of using my Game Pass, I bought the disc.
Right.
So,
right.
So you got to be careful when, yes, you have Game Pass or, these other systems, but just make sure, research, does it have everything that's entitled, for that game?
And that's such a great thing to bring up because you're right. Steam did completely change the game when it came to digital distribution.
Yep.
When it came to the idea of finally owning these games that you wanted for so long. And do you guys remember, have you ever bought a PC game at a store?
A long time ago.
Just with
one. Go ahead. No, actually three.
Just with the giant boxes. Like, yes. I just remember the StarCraft like battle chest, the Warcraft battle chest. Yep. Those are the only games they'd keep in stock, or like the actual, like back in the 90s, like the giant like bigger than most like library editions of atlases would just be these games that would come with like 4 floppy disks. It was the worst.
And what's awesome is you can go. There's this chain. I didn't see any in Houston when I was out there in a couple months ago, but in Dallas, there's this chain called Half Price Books, right? And so of course oh, bro. We would spend like probably 3 hours in there because not only do they have used books, right? But they have used vinyl. And it's not really new stuff. It's more older stuff. But if you're into 70s or 80s rock or country or whatever, you know, they got it there. Even I'm sure they have old disco there too. But they also have good, it used to be, but now it's still pretty good. But they also have used video games, right? I just bought 2 months ago when I was out there in Dallas, I just bought Mario Tennis for the Game Boy Color. You know?
Hell yeah, that's a good one. I have that one.
Yes. So what was the point that we were trying to make with this?
Oh, just about like buying old games and just like how Steam completely changed the game when it came to digital distribution.
Right. So, for the boxes, right? For the PC boxes. So, you know, you could find old Doom 3, you know, the PC, like the battle chest every once in a while, because I always look for PC, and you could find like some really old school PC boxes. So, but yeah, I bought 3. I got Rogue Squadron before it came to the Nintendo 64.
Oh yeah.
I got Episode 1 Racer on PC.
Hell yeah.
And then I bought whatchamacallit 3. What's the remaster that's coming out by Blizzard? Diablo 2, right? So I bought Diablo 3. I bought the PC version for that.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, but the boxes for the PCs were always cool, man. That's a good point.
So we're talking about Steam. This is a good transition point. Thanks, George.
Gracias.
Let's end off here on our last one. We talked about them changing the game and changing things up. This one's definitely a change for them. They announced this week the Steam Deck, which is basically a portable gaming PC that looks eerily similar to a Switch. I'm going to take some of this from the IGN article it was announced in. Basically, spec-wise, it has a 7-inch 1280 by 800 screen. It's 60 hertz. It uses a custom AMD APU, and then it uses RDNA2 for its GPU, and it has 16 gigs of RAM. So it's actually like pretty decent hardware-wise. And this person in this IGN article said they were able to play Jedi Fallen Order on a Steam Deck at high graphical settings with little to no issue, is their quote. This is Tom Marks, by the way, on IGN. But just wanted to kind of talk about this because it's obviously taken the world by storm, or maybe it has, I don't know, this past week. And I know pre-orders have already gone up in the last week, and so a lot of people jumped in on that, and basically you pre-ordered the chance to be able to pre-order it later this year.
That is incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you guys think about this thing? Because for me, I don't see a use for it personally, but only because I already have a Switch. And, you know, most of these games, I don't really play anything portable for the most part. And so if I'm going to play, you know, Jedi Fallen Order, I'm going to play it on my PS5. I'm not going to play it on my 7-inch screen personally, but I know that's just like a personal use basis. I think it's cool. I still think it's cool tech. I just don't, for me, it's not something I would buy.
I think this is dope. Like, I think this is really cool. I don't think it's targeting consoles. I think it's targeting like laptops, like gaming laptops specifically. And people who are, I guess, curious about PC gaming, who are intimidated to build their own rig, which I get. I'm intimidated to build my own rig. But like, I don't see this competing with any of the consoles, and I don't see this even competing with Switch, really. Like, I don't think this is like a viable handheld mobile platform. I think it's like way too intensive. I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool. But you guys remember the Steam machines that came out like maybe 6 years ago, where like Valve
Yes.
was like,
Yeah.
okay, we've streamlined the OS. We're gonna make these like super small form factor PCs that are just designed to run games. And it seemed like they were competing with consoles. And this is back when everyone was all doom and gloom about consoles
Yeah.
and how the PC revolution was gonna just sort of nip it in the bud. Those sold less than 1 million units combined, and like that was part of the problem, was that everyone was sort of allowed to just do whatever they wanted and call it a Steam machine. So there was no brand sort of cohesion across the line, which I think is a problem. This doesn't seem to have that. Like it's just one model with 3 different SKUs, right? With just like
Right.
different size solid state hard drives, right? Was that
Right.
That's the different price points? So yeah, I think it's competing with laptop gaming, but at the same time, there's so many games that are you'd rather play on a laptop than with a handheld. Like,
Yeah.
I want a Steam PC so I could like play real time strategy games. And this looks like a nightmare to play real time strategy games on. You know?
Yeah. Well, and my concern, and I mean, forgive my ignorance because I haven't looked into it too much, but my concern is that you're right. It's not trying to compete with consoles necessarily. It might be trying to compete with the Switch, but I don't think it is competing with the Switch. I think it's a different. It's just a different market. My concern is that because they are putting out this proprietary piece of tech that can't be upgraded in any way. There's no, I mean, you can't do anything with it. What you get is what you get, but it's running PC games. I mean, it's literally running your Steam library, is my understanding. My concern is that, with a console, those games are optimized for that specific hardware. Like when you get a PS5 game, that developer has put so much time into making sure that it runs very specifically on the GPU and CPU that is in the PS5. My concern here is that doesn't sound like that's going to be the case with this thing. It sounds like it's literally just running PC games on this hardware. And so again, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that in a couple years, like 2 or 3 years, if you're still trying to play modern games on this thing, I don't think it's going to hold up quite as well as they're saying that it is right now. And so that would be my biggest concern, is trying to run PC games on this proprietary piece of tech that's again able to run most games, current games, on like medium to high settings. I just don't know if it's going to hold up, over the years, but maybe that's just a concern of mine and not other people's.
I think that's valid because that's not just current games, right? Like that's current games and everything that's come out before and is currently available on Steam, and like that's a huge library. Like I don't mean to like knock that, like that's nothing to scoff at, but man, that's also like so many games were designed to be played on PC and not with like with keyboard and mouse, and it's just like, all right, so you're kind of taking away like the one thing that made PC like a precise, exact platform, and it's again it's so incredibly cool. Like I don't mean to knock it at all.
It's for sure.
It's like this is basically what Sony would have to do to get back into like the handheld market, right? Like something this bold and ambitious.
Right.
But you're totally right in that like these games are like made for their specific platforms, and these PC games are not. They're made for hundreds of platforms, right?
Right. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the developers of certain games will start like optimizing their games specifically for this thing. Maybe that will happen. It's just I feel a little weird because it's like it's running PC games, but by all means, like it literally is a console. I mean, it is a console by definition, and so I just don't know how that's going to mesh as far as like getting games to run that way without like this very specific optimization that most console games have for their hardware.
Okay, so you brought up something that I didn't even know we'd go in that direction when you started talking about the Steam machines. Remember, before all of those prototypes came out, one of the CESs, like in maybe 2012, had what was called the Piston. Do you guys remember that? It was.
I don't remember that. I do not. No.
It was about I don't know, maybe 6 inches by 6 inches by 3 or maybe. But that was the very first quote unquote Steam machine, and the company went under. It was a bad company, but there was a lot of hype. There was a lot of hype, and it's funny. Like when you mentioned the Steam machines, my first thought went back to that first prototype that they announced at CES. But anyways, my take is no, it's not going up against. It's not even going not consoles, but I don't even think it's going up against Game Pass. I think it's going up against the Epic Game Store. Just I think. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it's definitely for players that have Steam accounts already. I don't think moms, in October and November are going to be going out trying to pre-order
right
this Steam or the Steam Deck for their child, right? So I just think it's another thing for Valve, and to make them just more maybe profitable. I don't know, but the whole fiasco with the Steam machines, that's one thing. But I think what's their VR?
The Vive.
Yes, I think that's the best. That's head and shoulders above everybody else as far as their VR headsets. So at least they did put a lot of money into that. So I'm thinking that they're going to put a lot of money into this, and this will be a good product, But like I was telling you guys earlier this week, when the GameCube, when the Dolphin emulator runs on it, okay, I'll be in.
Yeah,
sure.
And I think the thing, I think my biggest issue I have with it is that it's a very specific audience they're going for with this. I think it's I mean, like you said, I think it's specifically for people that already have a Steam account or already are PC gamers who primarily play on Steam, to kind of add this into their experience. I don't necessarily think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think people are going to go out and buy this that like don't PC game or who haven't used Steam before, which, again, like we've talked about, I don't in that way, I don't think it's competing with consoles. I'm just curious to see how well it sells. Like I want to know how it's going to perform sales wise, because there has been a lot of hype, but to be fair, we're in the atmosphere of people who are super into games and super into this stuff, and I just don't know if it's ever going to penetrate outside of that market. I don't know if there's ever going to be any mass appeal to this.
Well, and I feel like people are still super into spending money.
Yeah,
how hard is it to get anything you're looking for? Like collectibles are just it's a completely gutted economy now. Like you can't find old games anywhere. I can't find any action figures whenever I go to like Walmart or Target or anything. Like they're always like it looks like a post-apocalypse in there. Like, and the only like survival equipment taken was McFarlane figures from DC. So I think that this is probably coming out at the right time, because it is just like, here's a cool new toy that will justify all these dollars you've already spent. And like if you spent $3,500 on your gaming PC, which like isn't unreasonable amount to spend on a gaming PC, why wouldn't you spend $400 to $600 on like an extension of that, so you can play your library? Which again, probably if you build a $3,500 gaming rig, you probably spent a lot of money on games through Steam. So why wouldn't you spend this just to enjoy those games when you're traveling, when you're in bed, when you're on the couch, and like you don't want to sit at your desk? So like I think you guys both nailed it, that this is like a perfect complementary purchase to someone who's already very ingrained in the Steam ecosystem, but is unlikely to be like the principal purchase for someone trying to get into PC gaming.
But do I want to play Jedi Fallen Order on a 7-inch screen? Yeah, I don't think so. Like the good thing about like the Switch is like I never would play Breath of the Wild handheld. That's a big TV type of game. But there's other games on there, like some RPGs or even smaller games that you can enjoy handheld. But I just don't see these big AAA games on a 7-inch.
Well, And to be fair, we are excluding the fact that they are going to sell a dock for this thing. So it is going to work similarly to the Switch if you buy the dock. But I have to say, at that point, if you've got this thing, you've bought the dock, it's like a Steam device. Wouldn't you just play it on your PC at that point? I mean, or like we talked about last week with Seth, use the Steam link and just stream it to your TV if you want to play it on your TV. You know, I hate to keep repeating myself. So I think the last thing I'll say is that I agree with you, George. I think it is a really cool piece of tech. I just don't necessarily know the overall broad appeal for it. I don't know if there is one, but maybe there is. You know, maybe again, there's been a lot of excitement around it. So I'm curious to see what people think. I know, like for example, Seth was saying he'd love to get one so he could play Final Fantasy 14 on it. And I could, you know, if there's a game you're really into that you play all the time and you could play it on this, I could for sure see a case where you would buy one of these things. But
well, I've never owned like a PC in my entire life. Like I had like an Alienware that I bought off a friend. I literally bought that just so I could play like Magic the Gathering Arena. And then like 2 months later they added it to Mac. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm never going to turn this thing on anymore. But like even throughout the years, I've like somehow acquired like 20 games through Steam, you know, like whether it's just people like gifting me extra things they had or me drunkenly buying things on a sale because I'm like, oh, well, if Oblivion's $1.99, I'm not going to not buy it, you know, like just like dumb stuff like that. And so like, I don't know, like what's your breaking point? You know, like if you have 10 games, is that enough to convince you that like, oh, 10 games I've gotten over the years? Never played anything because I don't have a PC. Maybe now. Is it 15? Is it 25? Is it whatever? You know, like, what's your tipping point for a library to convince you to spend 400 to 600, 700? Like, I don't know how high it goes up.
I think it's 650 is the highest.
But like at least $400, you know, which like is a PlayStation 4 at launch. You know, like this, they're treating this like it is like a brand new console, which is super exciting. I hope they back it up in a way that they did not back up Steam machines.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm just curious to see what people think of it. I know Elijah was one of the people that was able to get the pre-order for the pre-order, so we'll see what he has to say about it in a while, and I'm sure we'll get some feedback from people. So I'm curious to see how it turns out.
I think this. Oh, there he goes. I think that this is something that will be out of stock for a long time.
Well, yeah, especially too because I think they're only selling it through their store, right? I don't know if it's going to be in stores.
Right.
So
because Vive is always out of stock.
Yeah, you can never find that thing.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's wrap it up there then.
I do have something to say real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that the article that I got my information from about the Nintendo removing credit card, blah, 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 was from Nintendo Life, and it was Liam Doolin. So that's where I got my information from.
Proper sourcing. There we go.
Yes. Integrity.
Right. Yeah, we did it. Was it Chicago style? Is that what we did? I can't remember. I haven't had to source anything in a long time.
We did MLA style.
There you go. That's
damn it. Okay. Yeah. It's Chicago or MLA. Yeah, you're right.
All right. So let's wrap it up there, though. Of course, you already know this if you're listening, but you can find Frameskip on pretty much anything. If you have friends, please. If you have friends, wow, why did I word it that way? Please send the show to your friends and have them listen to us if they're into games or nerd culture or whatever it is. Please do so. It really does help get more people involved in the show and get more people listening. So we really appreciate it if you do that. Leave a review if you're listening on a platform where you can do so, like Apple Podcasts. If you want to send us questions, you can send us those questions at our question form, bit.ly/frameskipq. That's bit.ly/frameskipq. You can also submit them to our Gmail at frameskippodcast@gmail.com. Same thing goes for our social media pages. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at frameskippod, and then facebook.com/frameskippod. George is at GB Loftus. Coach is also at frameskippod. I am at Austin J. Eller, and then our two buddies who are not here tonight. Seth, he's at Seth the 90s Kid. Don't follow him.
Do not
Elijah.
follow him.
Elijah is at Loco Lizardman. Follow him. So it's been a good episode.
Are we done?
It's good. I haven't seen Coach in forever.
Me
No,
either.
it's been a minute, man.
It's my
See you next time.
First time seeing you without the beard. My dog's barking. I'm gonna
Oh,
mute
yeah,
my
that's right.
microphone.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.